Alright, so now that the new range is installed, I can finally get rid of this, along with the rest of the cabinets here. Now the bottom one has all the cookware, so all the big pots and pans and everything else. So with these cabinets gone, the new place to put them all is actually going to be this wall. I'm going to be installing a pot rack at the top section, and then the bottom will be shelves. This is a freestanding brick wall, just over 3.5 inches in thickness, and I'm going to be drilling through it with the rotary hammer to anchor in the 1/2-inch rods. So, a foot away from the edge, a foot away from the other edge, and then one in the middle. And I'm making the initial pilot hole with the 5/32 bit. And then I'll go up to a 1/4 inch. Three-eighths. And finally 1/2 inch. And ideally, you'd have somebody helping with the dust collection wire drilling and not after. Here's the 1/2-inch rod, threaded. I'm going to be cutting about 9 of these at a length of 11.5 inches long. And then I'll test fit them into place to make sure they all go in the same depth, and also to set up the next step in scribing the mounting holes to the shelving itself. So with the rods in place, I lay the shelf across with the mounting side facing down, and then with a knife, I run it alongside both sides of the rod to score the thickness onto the wood. So now I've got the doweling jig lined up to those markings. This is an extra long 7/16 bit, and I'm going to go in about 8 inches. So here I am sandwiching this washer in between the nuts so that I can turn this with the socket. Here I'm going over the whole thing with the 120 grit so that all the edges and the corners are slightly rounded. The burning process does take away anything that's really sharp, so by default you'll end up with something that's slightly softer than what you started with. I do think that the end result of the next step look better this way with them rounded already, as it tends to give it a bit of a more aged look. I start with a smaller torch and burn the ends, the front edge, and all the knots first, on both sides. This is because the knots take a lot longer to fully burn. If I were to try and do the whole thing at once using the big torch, by the time I finish burning a knot, it would completely overburn the surrounding area. So by using a smaller, more focused flame, I can target just the knots and get them burned most of the way, so that when I come back with the big torch, it provides a much more evenly burned result. After that, I go over the remaining surface with the big torch. This is dimensional lumber, so being softwood, it burns very fast and easily. So I'm keeping the flame somewhat low and going over it slowly for more of a light roast rather than scorching it to bits. Yakisugi was originally developed as a method of preserving and protecting the wood from things like rot and decay and insects. I'm just doing it because it looks good. In fact, I'm not even putting any top coat on these. The more dings and scratches and fades that it develops, the better, as it's more in line with what my wife wants. She likes things that look imperfect and worn out. Not so much when it's done by design intentionally, but she's very keen on things that are authentically and organically flawed. Probably why she married me. Anyways, the next step is the very messy process of brushing away all the charred bits. This step is not enjoyable whatsoever. There's really no fun way to do this part. Best approach is to just wear a mask and get through it as fast as possible. Only thing to remember here is to brush with the grain, following the direction as best as you can. I use a bigger wire brush for the face and the sides, and a smaller one for the ends. So the vacuum method doesn't work as well here. There's a lot of fine powder that's hanging on pretty good. So I'm hooking up the hose to the exhaust port to use this as a blower. So that looks pretty decent, but you'll see that this entire thing is still pretty filthy. I'm gonna have to wipe this down a bunch of times, but even then, it's gonna always leave a bit of residue. And lastly, the mounting. This is just a matter of pushing them in. It is all friction fit, but once they're in place, you won't be able to get them out without a pry bar. So there it is. Floating shelves mounted on a brick wall. Next episode, I'll be fabricating the pot rack and the hooks to complete this wall. Till then, that's about that.